Hey guys, it's Richard, and today I'm going to be bringing you another Evolution of Combat analysis style video. Now what it is today is the Storm of Armadyl spell and how it is affected by the Armadyl Battlestaff, something that a lot of people might not actually know about, how it's affected. Now before the Evolution of Combat, the Storm of Armadyl was actually a pretty powerful spell. I mean, it's not so much now, but it was also improved by the Armadyl Battlestaff, which meant that it got a 3-second spell cast time instead of a 3.6 second, which made quite a fair amount of difference in combat. But now it's been changed significantly, and instead the Armadyl Battlestaff gives the Storm of Armadyl spell a unknown modifier on auto attacks. There used to be a post on the forums in the patch notes saying that it had changed the auto attack damage modifier, which is now missing, and no one actually knows what the modifier is, and no one even knows if it's true or not. But what I did today is I spent a fair amount of money buying like some Armadyl runes, got the Armadyl Battlestaff, and I did 200 casts with an Armadyl Battlestaff, figured out the average damage of the spell, and then I did exactly the same with the Chaotic Staff and saw what the difference was and sort of did some analysis there. So first of all, the average damage with the Armadyl Battlestaff was about 1k. I mean, specifically it was 1014, which is a pretty standard auto attack damage for a spell. And then when I did it with the Chaotic Staff, it turned out as being around 900. So as you can see already, there is a significant difference. Also, I looked at, because I wrote down all the figures that I got, and then I looked at the highest hit that I got with the Armadyl Battlestaff, which was 2044. And then the highest hit I got with the Chaotic Staff was only 1860. So once again, you can see a pretty clear difference of the Armadyl Battlestaff being about 10% better in the auto attacks. I also looked at the estimated damage difference. Now, the figure I got was 12.2%, but when I looked over it, and I thought, well, it was a pretty small sample size that I got hold of, so I'm going to predict that the percentage difference in damage, it gives a 10% boost. That's my prediction, and I think it would make a lot of sense. It's pretty reasonable. Also, I wanted to say that I worked out what I reckon the average damage now is with the Armadyl Battlestaff with the Storm of Armadyl. So the base damage is 739 on the spell, but with the Armadyl Battlestaff doing the calculations, it seems to be around 830, which once again is kind of in fitting with that 10% boost, although obviously that is a 12% boost, but that's the calculations that I got today. Now secondly, I wanted to note on how it's affected by abilities. Now basically the simple answer is it's not at all. Now this obviously this makes sense because it does it on the base damage for the spell rather than the auto attacks. Obviously this means if you're going to be using abilities, there's going to be absolutely no difference whatsoever. So it's kind of pointless in that. However, if you're on a Slayer task or something and you're using air spells, then the momentum auto attack damage that you're going to gain is actually pretty significant. Your kills are going to be a hell of a lot quicker, and just in general it is significantly faster for that reason. On top of that, a lot of people actually use momentum at bosses now, and a good example of a boss that's weak to air spells is Saradomin, or whatever her name is, Commander Ziliana, in the God Wars dungeon, and she's weak to air spells, so it's pretty effective to use the air spells. So if you're using the Armadyl Battlestaff and you're using autocast, then you've actually got yourself a pretty decent DPS, although some people would prefer to take the Chaotic Staff because it's got that tiny little edge on accuracy. I believe the accuracy bonus is about 600 more, because the exponential curve means that the accuracy increase is actually pretty damn significant. So you might want to consider investing in that instead. But I mean, in all, pretty good weapon to use if you're using something that's weak to air and you're doing Slayer and using momentum. But besides that, it's got pretty limited uses. So for example, like, there really aren't very many Slayer monsters at all that actually are weak to air spells. I mean, Curadel, I don't think Curadel actually assigns any that are weak to air spells. I think one exception is Dagonoths, and there are a couple of specific Dagonoths that are actually weak to air spells. But in general, realistically, it's not actually that viable to do it. So personally, I wouldn't recommend using it because of the extra cost and the fact that you'd have to invest like 14 mil in an Armadyl Battlestaff and then about 500 in the runes. So in all, I genuinely wouldn't recommend it. It's just unnecessary expense. You might as well just stick yourself with a Chaotic Staff if you've got one, or a Polyport if you've got the money, and just stick with that. You'll find yourself doing pretty similar damage output, but it's still something that's quite interesting, quite noteworthy to see that there is that difference in damage. So that's the end of the analytical part of the video, but I thought a few people might actually be interested in how I got to my sort of final statistics and everything, so I thought I would show you the page that I used for it. So I'm gonna hop over to my Camtasia recording so I can show you the screen I was using, and so I'll see you in a second. Okay, so what we have here is basically the Google Docs page that I use for getting all my information. I put in all the values that I caused with the damage. So along the left here is basically every single value of damage I did. So it took me quite a while to input all the information and everything, but you know, it was kind of worth it. It's kind of worth it to see the information. And if we look at the very median piece of information, then 900, sorry, not median, mode, I don't know, I haven't done statistics for years. But yeah, the very middle piece of data, you've got about 1,000 on the Armadyl Battlestaff and then about 900 on the Chaotic Staff. So once again, you can see that really easy difference. It's pretty noteworthy, it's pretty obvious, but the information is right clear out in the open. And then right down at the bottom here, I did a little bit of calculations. So I calculated the average, then I calculated the average for both of them, and then you can see that once again, very clear difference between the two of them. And and I also worked out the highest and value for both of them, and so you got 2,044 on this one, 1,860 on that one, and so once again there's a really clear 10% difference between them. So I wasn't expecting the data to be so perfect like that. If I'm completely honest, I was expecting the randomness of RuneScape to turn out that using the Chaotic Staff would be more damage, and you know what it's like with RuneScape. It's just so unlikely and it's very unpredictable. But as you can see here, 12.2% as I said. And then on the damage, pretty much exactly 10%, so very perfect there. And this final value here is how I worked out the estimated damage of auto attacks when using the Armadyl Battlestaff. So what I basically did is I got the 739, which is the attack damage, the attack base damage of Storm of Armadyl, and then I times it by this 12.2 blah 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 percent and worked out the estimated damage. So as I said, about 830, which for any spell that does make it the most powerful spell. But at the same time, that's only with auto attacks, that's not with abilities. And so up here is where I did the ability damage test. And as you can see, I did exactly the same rotation. I made sure I did exactly the same abilities in exactly the same order. And it turned out that they're so similar. You can tell that it's pretty much identical damage. Now what you might notice here is that I made a note of the bleed damage. Now the reason behind this is because when you do a bleed damage, it always does 100% of the weapon damage or 125% of the weapon damage over 5 seconds. And so what I did, so with the Armadyl Battlestaff, if you just do 148 times the 5 times it will hit over those 6 seconds, and then you get 740. Now the damage is 739, so it's just rounded it up, which is surprising for RuneScape to round up to give us extra damage. So that's basically that. And then if you do the same, when you did the second type of bleed, it was 185. So if you do 185 times the 5, once again, it's the same thing. It's 739 times 739 times 1.25, so 125%. As you can see, very similar values. So using the bleeds is a really good way to tell the damage. It's very easy. Because it's the only thing that is entirely consistent, which is kind of nice. It makes it kind of, for once, there is actually a certain degree of like stability and reassurance when you're doing this. So that's kind of an interesting piece of information. So this is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope the information that you found has been insightful. All of this information, I'm going to put a link in the description so you can look through all of the Google Doc stuff yourself. If you find it interesting, then yeah, feel free to comment. Also, if you have any other ideas of in-depth style videos I can do for the evolution of combat, then feel free to throw them at me. If you want to tweet them at me, my Twitter is @TheScapeQuest, and then just send any suggestions to me, and that'd be pretty awesome. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been useful information, and I hope to see you in the next video.